Good morning, everyone. Can you all hear me, or do I need to be a bit closer? All good? Good morning and a relatively warm welcome to our Club Management Seminar. Many of you may know me as the President of the AOMC, and I do wear some other hats in my personal and professional life. So hopefully I can enlighten you a little bit on the topic of risk management. I've tried to make this relevant to clubs. I've got the wonderful task of really putting you all to sleep before the tax office gets here, and that way you'll give her a nice easy time of it. But they talk about risk management as being a corporate buzzword and relevant for the big business side of town. It's actually just as relevant for us in clubland. It's relevant for us in not-for-profit land, and it's relevant for us in community service. So nothing can be further from the truth. But I sort of wear two hats. I wear an AOMC hat as well, providing you with some information. And yes, I've been in clubland with the Jaguar Car Club. So I guess I'm trying to give you a perspective from both. I want to make this presentation relevant to clubs.
So you'll want your presentation, won't you?
Because no one really wants to sit here and look at me, do they?
Go for it.
Okay. So let's put up a definition. The Victorian Government Risk Management Framework defines risk management as the effect of uncertainty on objectives. But talking in clubland, here's one we prepared earlier.
You can't tell what the computer's going to do to you.
A bit about risk management and preparedness, maybe. So I normally, when I refer to this in clubland, I go back to Murphy's Law and Murphy making an appearance, because I think that's something that all of you can relate to in one shape or form or another. So we'll go to Murphy's Law. Many of you in clubland run events, and whilst things might seem perfectly calm and well organised on the surface, there's generally a whole lot of people pedaling very hard underneath to make things happen. A beautiful week can often lead to Armageddon on your display day. And I speak for Victoria only. Victoria tends to deliver the goods of 4 seasons in one day. A great lunch can often be kiboshed by someone at a venue not getting the booking date right, or not getting a dietary requirement right. A meeting night can often turn into a disaster with, let's call it the AV not working. How many of you have experienced those sorts of events? I mean, it's not strange. It's not, how would you say it, far from the truth, and it's something that happens to all of us. If anything can go wrong, it will go wrong. And this is just what this risk management session is about. So risks can be broken into types. And like anything, they've all got their own characteristics. None of these are more important than any one or the other. You may have had the most wonderful product or service or offering for the general public. But if you can't pay your bills, if you're deregulated or decommissioned, you really haven't got a business or a club or an organisation. It's all of these together make the world go around and make your business or your operation work. So I'm going to go through them one by one, but try and make them relevant to people in clubland. Operational risk is really about people, process, policy, and systems. It's about what's within your control to do planning and development in your own business. In clubland, If you don't have a process for membership renewals, the people you don't follow up on will drop off your membership list. You've all seen that, no doubt. If you don't have a process for dispute resolution, an argument or an altercation between two members could go very, very sour. If you don't have a policy for your CPS management, you might end up being deregistered as an approved club by Vic Roads. If you don't have appropriate financial controls, you might not have a business. And I think the final one is really important, and that is if you don't have a succession plan for your club, who is going to be the next generation of people making your services in your club available to other people or to potentially new members? That's operational risk. Financial risk is not the same as credit fraud and so forth. It really relates to financial investment risk. It's about making sure that you do have the cash flow to fund your events as they occur. Everyone in Clubland knows that you tend to get your renewals around, if you're a financial year club, around 30th of June, 1st of July. And that cash flow needs to see you through for the rest of the year. If you don't have a plan for that, if you don't have a budget, that's really a liquidity element of financial risk. There's great businesses with fantastic products, but if they can't pay their bills, they haven't got a business. There's also in financial risk terms, there's also the treasurer that sees an advertisement for a great investment on Facebook that XYZ Friendly Society or Credit Union or so forth, not wishing to disparage any of those institutions, has an amazing interest rate that might be attractive to the club. But if you haven't done the due diligence around investigating whether that's an appropriate investment for your club's savings, that is introducing financial risk. There's the timing of key cash flows. If you're running a national rally or something to that effect, having a budget, having a plan, knowing when you're going to be obliged to pay your venues, not having that managed is a financial risk to your organisation. Do we all relate to those sorts of things in Clubland? We all run events. We all try to deliver services to our members. We all get our renewals about the same time each year. It's about making that work. Strategic risk. Strategic risk really goes to the fundamental of a business. It's actually not it's actually the risk of the business not being able to meet the organisation's objectives and not be able to deliver what it needs to deliver. So, cast your mind back to a little thing we had about 2020 called COVID. Risk-averse businesses had already developed online platforms, were already doing ordering over the internet, ordering by phone. They didn't have such a large step to take to be sustainable when, heaven forbid, the shutdowns and the lockdowns and all of those horrible things that we went through occurred. They were already strategically prepared for, I guess, moving into a new paradigm of doing business. So in Clubland, what does that mean? What does that strategic risk mean? It means not really having a membership platform to manage your members. It's not managing processes that are key to your club's operations. It's putting people in positions without the support or the experience or the qualification that they need to do those roles. And finally, for me, whose club here has a strategic plan? And I'm not talking about a wanky corporate document that sort of sits on the shelf and has nice, pretty pictures. But whose club has a plan for where their club needs to go? I think this is a little bit telling because that's a strategic risk of not knowing where your club is headed or not having a plan to take your club into the future. Can we all relate to that in some way, shape, or form? I should be very polite to anyone from any legislative framework or the tax office that's in the room, but compliance risk is a key one, and it's one that most people are well aware of. But examples include failure to lodge documents. Data and privacy breaches are starting to become very much things that are spoken of and things that can bring businesses down. Can you all remember very recent times, Optus data breaches? How much of an impact did that have on customers? There's been significant number of data and privacy breaches over the last little while, which has had a significant impact on those businesses. I mean, we know that the Optus data breach cost them a significant percentage of their database, their customer base, I should say, and a significant amount of money. But in Clubland, it could be as simple as running an event without a food safety plan. Some events that you run require food safety plans. We have amazingly complex legislative frameworks. We're governed by local government, we're governed by state government, we're governed by federal government. And unfortunately, the legislation doesn't really care whether you're a car club with 20 members. If you're doing an event that meets the characteristics of having to comply with something like a food safety plan, you need to do that. They don't care that you're a football club or a car club or whatever else the case might be. I guess the most obvious one for car clubs is the legislative compliance around the club permit system. I mean, you have all got a deed of agreement with Big Roads in running your club permit systems. And your members basically should be signing up to follow the processes, follow the procedures that the club has in order to be compliant with their own obligations under the CPS. And then there's the one that's obviously clubs are of varying sizes and scopes. Some people have to lodge things with the ATO. Some people have to lodge things with Business Affairs Victoria. Again, some of these things, not doing some of these things can bring you undone very easily. How many people know where their club databases are stored? That's good. All of that membership information, if it's hacked or if it's, I guess, compromised, potentially is a data breach. Just be aware that that framework is changing very quickly. Reputational risk, I think, is the one that will bring clubs undone very quickly. Has anyone seen the little video or snapshot of a McDonald's worker drying a mop under the lights of the chip fryer? Yeah. Didn't do really good things for McDonald's image. I don't think when they say, would you like fries with that? You know, do you really want mop hair as well? I don't think that was one of the options. How many people are aware of the stories that came out through the Banking and Insurance Royal Commission? Banks and insurance and finance companies selling insurance or products to people who are deceased or people who are clearly unable to afford said products. It really did not do the reputation of those institutions very well at all. And everyone who has seen something like A Current Affair or Today Tonight or one of those programs would see the dodgy builder who, you know, the wall doesn't line up or the roof's falling in or they haven't failed to complete a job. Those people, not only will they have compliance elements that will bite them, but their reputation becomes null and void. So in clubs, it could be as simple as a bad experience with a member or potential member. It's really not hard to put someone offside just by not greeting them in a friendly manner or person X making a comment about person Y. It doesn't take much. You've all been there, you've all seen it. It really doesn't take much to have your reputation on social media or in your club community go down the toilet. For me, it's about an organisation or a club doing what it says it's going to do and following the processes that it says it's going to process. And one of the things I can recommend to most clubs is have a feedback system. Try and understand what your members want, what your members are satisfied with, and maybe not satisfied with. So you can do something about it in advance rather than having people bad-mouthing your club, your organisation, whatever, out in the big wide world. What's the best way of finding a good plumber or a good accountant or a good lawyer? You go and ask your friends, or you chat around amongst your own friendship circle, community group, professional group. It's very easy to have a good reputation, but it's just as easy to have a poor one. So we've talked about types of risk. So let's talk about managing that risk. And I think it's a fairly simple process. And this doesn't have to be, and I'm using the word, a wanky corporate session, so to speak. It actually needs to be common sense and relevant to the organisation that's employing it. A lot of what I'm talking about today is common sense. It's planning for risk. It's identifying what your risks are. It's assessing those risks, managing and mitigating those. Doing the ongoing monitoring, are we getting this right? And then reviewing that process. It doesn't seem all that complex, does it? So risk planning. To me, it's about having a risk-based approach. And that's at your top level. So if you're car clubs, it's about having your committee aware of risk, having a risk policy for your organisation. What will we tolerate? What won't we tolerate as far as our level of risk? And having that present in the thinking around planning an event or a run or something as simple as your annual concours or display day. Have that risk-based thinking up front and have it supported by your board or your committee. Always ask yourself the questions, what could go wrong? Now that you've sort of got a commitment to risk, you need to actually go around and identify it. And that means, I guess, if you're doing something like a concours event or a run, has someone done a dry run of that event? Does someone know that the road's suitable to take a veteran or vintage car? Has someone checked the oval that you're displaying your vehicles on for sprinklers or potholes or whatever else? Are there children playing in a playground next door that's going to require some traffic management? And some of this stuff is just about looking for it and actually saying, well, something could go wrong here. If I've got a whole lot of kids around at the same time as I'm getting a couple of hundred cars onto a display space, kids aren't often car friendly. Cars aren't often kid friendly. And the combination of both generally doesn't end well, generally for the child and generally for the person who's driving that vehicle and the club who's responsible. So I guess I'm saying go out and actively look for it. Don't just accept that things will happen and it'll be fine. So once you find your risks, have a look at what the consequence of that risk would be. I mean, I'm giving you some ridiculous examples of, children running in front of cars and things like that. But they're not that ridiculous in some ways. It doesn't take much. It doesn't take much. So do the analysis around likelihood versus consequence. And I'll go through a couple of examples on a risk table in the next slide. Some things need to be addressed urgently. Some things you can do as part of your ongoing planning and development. So many of you might have seen a table like this. So It's about the consequence of likelihood versus consequence and the balance between them both. So if you're running a club display day, what could go wrong? Let's put down a meteor strike. Is it likely? Well, I haven't seen too many in my years on the earth. But if we did have one, the consequence would be, I would suggest, this is quite funny in some ways. It could make quite an impact, couldn't it? However, if you're having an outdoor event in winter, what is the probability, okay, particularly in Melbourne, of rain or wind or cold? It's fairly high. So again, you've got something that's almost certain. Will it be catastrophic like a meteor strike? Probably not. But it's about planning for that and doing the analysis around, well, okay, I've identified my risks, I've assessed them. What is the consequence of those risks and how can I mitigate and manage? So there's probably not much you can do about the meteor strike because the umbrella you bring for the rain isn't probably going to help you too much. But if you're running your outdoor event, you may be making a booking with the scout hall next door and say, look, I've got 50 people, we're intending to have a picnic, but if the weather turns unpleasant, can we have a booking or temporary booking at your scout hall so we can go inside and keep going? It's as simple as that. Control measures around risk are hierarchical. I mean, the best thing we could ever do is eliminate risk. But I don't think anyone wants to live their life under a rock. And I don't think we all want to not do the things that we enjoy and want to participate in. The next thing we can do is substitute something that is less risky. Maybe put on an event that is an outdoor event in summer rather than winter. Then you've got to manage the heat. But look at a substitution. You can look at engineering controls. Things like barriers to stop children running out in front of traffic. It's an example of an engineering control. You can look at administrative controls, policies, procedures. This is the way things should be done. Safe working instructions. And then if you can't do anything of that, if people are going to be exposed to risk, if they're doing particular work, make sure they're wearing safety glasses or whatever prescribed PPE is. You've put the process in place, you've got backup plans. So the idea of monitoring and controlling means that you just don't leave things on the shelves. I have a particular hatred of researchers. Is there anyone in the room who's a researcher? There's a whole lot of people that are, got a whole lot of fancy letters behind their names. And I'm really sure that they're very smart and do some very, very good research. But if that research sits on the shelf and doesn't have an impact on the people it's designed to assist, really is that research of any value? So I guess what I'm saying is make your risk processes monitorable, controllable, and finally continue to review them. It's not just about a set and forget. It is a process, it is a journey. If you can improve it based on your previous experience, go and do that. It's not about a set and forget. This is an ongoing process. I would encourage all clubs, whether you're 10, 20 members or whether you're 2,000 members, to have a risk-based approach, which includes an overall risk management policy for your organisation, risk management plans and processes for particular activities, and across your activities, a risk management process. A focus, sorry. Meaning you're actually looking for things that could go wrong and preventing them rather than accepting the consequence. You can't eliminate all risks, but you can monitor, manage, and therefore minimise. Questions? Are we all awake? Did I put you to sleep successfully?
Just,
Sorry, I don't know your name. Related to the
Jenny tomorrow,
Hi, Jenny.
just
Machinery and Vehicle Club.
hold on for a minute. Yeah,
Just if you are asking questions today, could I ask you to wait for the roving mic so that people on the Zoom session can actually hear your question as well? Thank you. So,
How you going, everyone? It's Jenny Tabone from the Ballan District Vintage Machinery and Vehicle Club. Our members, the age demographic, our youngest is 12, our oldest is now 94.
quite diverse.
Yeah, we are the top heavy end of the age bracket. Most of our members are over 60 years of age. Pretty much old school. She'll be right, mate. Always done it like that. Don't like change. So we are trying to navigate implementing new policies and procedures, and sometimes it can be a struggle. I've always done it that way. No accidents ever happened before. I'm just wondering if any other clubs have the same issue. Obviously, us younger, I'm in my mid-50s, but you know, I'm a younger member, and they don't like change, and it is really hard to adapt sometimes new policies and procedures, and to get them to comply. So I'm going to try and take baby steps, but any suggestions sometimes help.
Jenny, can I take a couple of your points in as points? Whose club's demographic is similar to Jenny's, where your age group is skewed towards a 50, 60 plus? I'm suggesting potentially that's a risk in itself. But Jenny, you're right. There is a lot of, we've always done it that way. But can I remind you of an event that happened in about 2020 that changed the way we've always done a lot of things? How many of you carry cash around in your wallet these days? How many of you regularly tap your cards with things? Before COVID, would that answer have changed for many of you?
yeah.
No? No. It's interesting because there's a lot of places that you can't actually pay cash for those. You have to tap your card. So we do need to adapt. It is a slowly approach, but by the same token, when you've got legislative framework saying this is the way you do it, and you must do it this way, you really don't have a lot of choice. And this is where I go to the comment I made earlier, that risk-based thinking is something that needs to start at the top and filter its way through to membership. Now, you might have always done it that way. It might have always worked, but all of a sudden there's other elements that you'll find will pop up. And I'll give you a really good example. Person or Club X has always had its display day at the local oval. Now, all of a sudden they need to put in a risk management plan to be able to hire that venue. And you can't just go along and say, we've always done it this way and no one's ever been run over. And many of you finding that with any public facilities that you've got to use, you've got to put in. Now, this doesn't need to be War and Peace. It doesn't need to be a substantial volume. It just needs to go to through that process of identification, assessment, mitigation strategies, and outcomes. It really doesn't need to be all that complex. But people look at a risk management plan and think, oh my goodness, how am I ever going to do this? I'll go and find a venue where I don't have to put one of these documents in. This won't happen for much longer because every venue you want to do, every venue you wish to use will probably require one. And it's been driven in essence by their insurers to want to know that their users have a risk management approach to actually the use of that venue and the event that they're actually going to be holding there. Because maybe the Ballan Council or the Moorabool Shire Council, I think it is, doesn't want to find on the front page of the newspaper that three children from the Milan Car Club have fallen in the river. I don't know if there's a river down near your oval, but because there wasn't any controls or any risk management around the event that the car club had at their local oval. That's reputational. So all of this links up and joins together quite effectively, and it can spell disaster. There's many people who have great business ideas. There's many clubs that have great offerings. But if someone's bad mouthing that club out on Facebook or something like that, and that's where people often tend to look for, Google, find me a car club for Albises. Well, and they've got a 1-star rating, and there's a whole lot of diatribe about, person X didn't like the shoes I was wearing, so they made a comment at the annual general meeting. I mean, I'm making stuff up, but you can see the connection. It doesn't take much to create a perfect storm. So to answer your question, it's a slowly approach. It is about introducing that thinking and approach at your board, committee, subcommittee type level. And I'm going to say you're going to be forced into doing some of these things just by the fact that you want to use a venue. If you're running, some of the largest state-based or national clubs run a federal or a national rally. I mean, some of these things are hundreds of thousands of dollars to actually put on. Now, you don't want your treasurer nicking off to Mexico. Not that I've got anything against Mexico. I'm sure it's a lovely place to be. But you don't want that happening in the process. You don't want them thinking, oh, I've got $50,000 in the bank until I need to pay these deposits. Let's go and put them in the ABC credit union or whatever that happens to be, not as safe and secure as it needs to be. And all of a sudden you've got members' funds disappearing or something to that effect, and you haven't got a national rally. It doesn't take much.
Just one moment. Tony Hall, I'm the secretary of the AOMC. Just to pick up on Jenny's point and also something that Keith mentioned on Facebook. I'm aware of the president of a club that wrote something on Facebook, the club's Facebook page, that was deemed defamatory. And he actually went for about $50,000. He was represented by one of the top defamation lawyers in Australia that had represented Channel 9, Channel 10, and he was told that he could pursue it and prove that he was actually correct, that it might cost him about $500,000. So I always find it useful in quite an anecdote of something that has gone off the rails seriously, that can help members understand what can happen, even though nothing's ever happened in the past. Yeah.
You can't put your head in the sand and say this won't happen to me, because chances are it could and it would.
Hi, Keith Mortimer, also from AOMC. I'm a member of a number of committees, and like probably most of us, we've all been around for a length of time. We have seen a lot of change in the last 5, 10, 15 years in particular. And most of us are on committees where a lot of the incumbents on those committees have been there for quite some period, and those people tend to roll over year on year. One of the things to pick up on the point that was raised earlier is if you can encourage people, say, I'm not being disparaging at all in the slightest, but younger people or fresher people or people who are perhaps a bit more professional, particularly seen it in the legal spheres and the financial spheres. You get people who are using their absolute best endeavours to be a treasurer of the club, for example. And I'm an auditor of another club that I'm a member of. We have rolling treasurers that come through every few years as a new treasurer. And it's a full-on education process. And most of those people have got no financial experience. And it's just absolutely painful trying to work with those people to keep up with today's requirements around finance and governance and things like that. And it's really a case of you get the right people with the right skill sets where possible into these positions, try and tap into your membership base and find people who perhaps in their professional lives have some of these skills and get them involved. It's going to help you out a lot in the long run.
So can I just pick up on Ken's point? A treasurer, for example, is a skill set that needs to be had. I mean, many of you have probably read articles about people maybe disappearing with the war chest of money and so forth. What processes have you got in place as a risk management process to make sure that your accounts are presented to at least your committee meeting every month? So at least that you're looking for, you're risk aware around big movements in cash accounts or surplus. How many people actually have their accounts presented each month to their committees? Good. How many people still run single signature check accounts? Well, dual signature or electronic version of the same? I mean, it doesn't take much. So if I could give you a couple of take-home messages. I think every organisation needs a strategic plan. Now, as I said, that could be, I don't want it to be some corporate sort of thing that people only in big business do. It's just about how is your organisation going to meet its objectives? How is it going to do that going forward? What's the plan for that organisation? So if you haven't got that in place, if you haven't got succession plans in for the members of your committee or essential tasks that are provided by your club, how do you think you're going to get those people? Do we have a plan for that? Because with some of these things just failing, you in essence all of a sudden don't have a club. And you know, your clubs provide so much for so many people. Do you want to see that demise? It's just about introducing some of that thinking. So how many people do have succession plans for their key positions? That you've got someone coming through the ranks. What made you do that? What was the catalyst to make that happen for your club?
I basically just.
Microphone, please.
I'm sorry, Mike. Well, I guess look at times to try and future is one thing, but also it's so difficult to find volunteers in this day and age. But, you know, we're lucky on our committee, we've got a very wide age spread. Who's our youngest, but maybe 30, 37 up to, I don't know, I won't say that.
The land beats you because they've got a 12-year-old.
So I think it's really about just securing the future, and we listen to our members and what I wanted that story and true tradition and future of the club. So that's what we do.
It's not that hard. And if you look at likelihood versus consequence, it's just a little analysis. Well, if you don't have people in those key positions, or if you're turning people over in those key positions, as in I was the treasurer last year, I'm now the secretary, now I'm back to treasurer, really, are you going to survive long term? I mean, all of us are vulnerable. All of us can get hit by a bus. Not wishing that upon anyone. So
my name is Susan Merrick and I'm the president of Mercedes-Benz Car Club. Just one other little sidestep, I suppose, for risk management. We have recently, in the last 6 to 12 months, put a code of conduct in place in our club. It's published for our members to read because we had the need. Sort of something we were going to put a stop to, something that was not, not catastrophic, but it could have been. And so I think that's another way of a behavioural risk management.
it's an operational control that we have in place. Who else has got a code of conduct or something similar? I know the AOMC committee does. So they're not allowed to laugh at me at my bad dad jokes anymore.
But we do.
But we do. Maureen.
Maureen Ross, Treasurer, Vintage Drives Club. Does the AOMC have a basic risk management outline that smaller clubs could perhaps step into?
We're developing one of those
Thank you.
that can be shared. And again, it'll be relevant to, anything. I guess what I'm saying is the principles here, it doesn't matter if you're a club of 20 people or if you're a club of 2,000 people. You can get bitten on the backside by the same event and have the same consequence. It really, your size doesn't matter. So don't put your head in the sand and say, she'll be right, mate. You actually need to actively manage and look for risks in everything that you do, not to the point that you put your head in the sand and I'm not going to do anything and my club can't do that anymore because we could have this or we could have that. It's about the recognition, assessment, mitigation processes, and then that the awareness that this could happen to us and what have we got in place to stop it. Gentlemen, Mike.
I'm David Ashley from the Dana Manchester Club. I just wanted to support what that lady said about templates. In any circumstances where I have to do
Close to your
in any
mouth.
circumstances where I have to do this stuff, I sought to borrow what other people have done as a starting point. And I think a lot of the discussion here has failed to recognise how limited the skills and resources are in small clubs and the knowledge. You can't just create it, or it's hard work. And I think things which make the arguments simplified, because the size reviews I recognise from the time when I was working, and they cover the whole ground. But in these clubs, I don't think you have to do that. You just have to find the key things where the club is at risk. And templates, so I just want to support what she said in space.
John.
I guess what I was trying to do, David, with this particular presentation is highlight what the processes and the consequences would be and create that, I guess, that community of curiosity around risk, because things will happen and not knowing what to do when things go wrong is quite significant. So,
John Duran from the Monitoring Institute of Victoria, and I've had about 20 years experience in management consulting, so I appreciate and agree with the process which you've spoken about for identifying and managing risk. The process, I think, is complete and we can be sure how to do that. The thing that I would add to it is that as well as using that process to find and manage the bad things that can happen, we can use the same process in opportunity identification. And so the process is the same. The mindset is the reverse of thinking things are going to be bad. We need to do that. If we're not careful, we miss looking for the opportunities that the same process would bring up. So we need to look at both risks and opportunities.
very good point, John. But I guess the point I'm really trying to introduce to everyone is if you're not looking in the first place, you miss the risks and the opportunities.
Yes, could I ask for this to be the last question so that we can stay on time
Sure.
today? And we'll have an opportunity later on for more questions during the panel discussion.
Colin Cooper from the BSA Motorcycle Owners Association. Rather than as a question, we recently had the opportunity to provide our management plan to assist the AOMC with the insurance proposal it has. Our management plan is for the All British Rally, which is a large event held each year in the middle of the central Victoria. So it seems like, rather than as a question, it seems like an opportunity for clubs to be able to share their resources rather than do things individually. So would the AOMC consider facilitating the process for clubs to share resources for the things that we're talking about?
Certainly. We recognise that, I guess, risk as a concept is not something that's been widely discussed in many clubs, and with no disrespect, particularly in the smaller clubs. So if we have an opportunity to, I guess, enable through templates, through even some consulting type discussions with people, putting relevant people together, we're all here to help each other, and that, in essence, makes us stronger.
It's also fair to say that one of the things we're looking at doing to minimise the cost of insurance for the clubs is to make sure that all of the clubs participate in a risk management profile, which is appropriate for the size of the club, appropriate for the types of activities we run and so on and so forth. So it's a good point, and it's something that we've realised we need to do more of, and we see an opportunity to do that as we keep developing the insurance, group insurance scheme that we've highlighted that is one of our strategic objectives. But thanks, Keith. If we could finish up, and then we'd be ready for a break.
So the final point for me is we spoke last year on governance. This year we've spoken on risk. They live very happily together. Next year, I think we're going to be speaking on strategy, because I think the combination of all three gives you a longevity as a club and a good way forward. Thanks, everyone.